The following podcast is a W2M Network original production. Visit W2Mnet.com for all of our other great podcasts, plus news, reviews, articles, and opinions from the worlds of wrestling, video games, football, and entertainment.
Bonsoir, mes amis français, et bienvenue au point des viewers. Mon nom est Viewer et je suis votre hôte. Je voudrais commencer avec un spécial bravo à président Macron pour avoir remporté l'élection et celle de la France qui a fait que ce que nous avons refusé de la faire aux États-Unis. Non seulement pour ces blessures n'est pas de fausses nouvelles et une tentative par les ennemis de faire vote démocratique, mais proscrire une idéologie flagrante qui n'est pas seulement dépassée, mais contourée. Vous-même et dans le monde dont à un droit des démagogues, des guerres et des haines massives. Des haines massives. Vous avez des noms à une femme qui fait une mission pour vous isoler du reste du monde moderne que de s'unir avec une oligarchie. Vous avez des noms aux fausses nouvelles et ayez confiance à votre instinct à lieu de croire un internet hack qui attend de vous détruire. Vous avez choisi des sons neufs, vous avez choisi le progrès, vous avez choisi de pas plus juste quelques trois de cool qui n'a rien dans la vie politique. Vous écoutez le récit édifiant que c'est je suis triste qui dirait que nous avons dû fournir pour protéger vous-même en Europe et le reste du monde occidental. Pour cela, je vous salue. Vous avez fait le droit de frotter nos visages collectifs combien plus intelligents que nous vous êtes. Vous êtes un droit de ne pas vous aider, mais il y a une partie de moi qui plaide qui vous faites. Nous pourrions l'utiliser maintenant plus que jamais, et j'ai peur que maintenant nous sommes seuls, il marche vers Doom. Nous devrions avoir écouté vos devises, mais plutôt choisi des supériorités et éviter et regarder où nous sommes. Merci de toujours ces souvenirs, égalité, liberté, fraternité. I also would like to apologize for my rudimentary French, as I've barely spoken a word of it before tonight since about 7th grade. Thank you. It's, like I said, although Spanish is my second tongue, believe it or not, I learned French first.
Yeah, I took 3 years of French in high school. I don't know that I could say too much, so that was pretty awesome there.
Well, I admit I looked up a translator to be sure, and I was thinking some of this I can pronounce on the fly, but if I butcher it, I hope not to butcher it too bad. But, yes, in light of recent events, I felt the need to do that. And, there is a part of me that's wishing, especially since Canada's looking damn good, that I had continued with French instead of Spanish. But 6 of one, half dozen of the other. As I said, my 6th grade teacher, which I initially learned French, loved me, wanted me to study French. I did in 7th grade. Liked it, but didn't really see a use for it living here in Florida, but there it is. I should find a way to dig up an English version to what I said, but that's at a later date. In the meantime, as I said, yes, this is Point of Viewer, and as a little bit of a tease, yes, the French election, it happened, it went well, thank fuck. Marine Le Pen only received about a third of the vote, thank fuck, and the latest attempts at any Russian interference failed. Maybe we should borrow the French model of having not just a 24-hour blackout, but a 44-hour blackout that goes the entire day before the election and then all the way until polls close the day of. Maybe different shit would happen. I don't know. I would guess. Either way, living in a swing state, I wouldn't have to deal with all of those goddamn campaign ads that love to run 3, 4, 5 times an hour because apparently we're one of the big states thanks to the archaic electoral college that's been outdated since the middle of the 19th century. Now, an interesting statistic I want to bring up. The French, they had an election similar to my home city of Jacksonville. They had what I like to call a unitary election. Every candidate out in the open, regardless of party, you have your debates, no primaries, no nothing. Everybody has a fair shot. If anyone wins 50%, it's automatically over, done and dusted. However, typically, and especially in crowded fields like this year, that didn't happen. So the top two, Macron and Le Pen, they went into a runoff. Now, the biggest difference here, they got to vote on a Sunday, and particularly a Sunday that fell on a 3-day weekend. We here, because of Sunday being the day of the Sabbath and Monday being a travel day, because for the longest time, yes, we actually relied on horses and buggies to get to the polls, we vote on a Tuesday. Why we still vote on a Tuesday is far beyond me. Also, the voter turnout in the French election, 74%. 74%. So 3 out of every 4 people eligible to vote went up and got to the polls. Casted their ballots in a little clear box. We rely on different machines and different things and so forth. No more paper ballots because we think, oh, technology is going to save us. Well, look what happened. But that 74% voter turnout was the lowest in a French election since 1969. Now, keep in mind, they go on a 5-year basis. So they've had quite a few elections since then. The lowest since 69. That same 74%, if that sort of a turnout happened here in the U.S., that would be the highest voter turnout since the games of the first modern Olympiad were held across the pond over in Athens in 1896. I'm going to let that sink in. It has been a century and a quarter, just about, since we've had that high of a voter turnout in a national election. So every time you hear about voting on a Tuesday for archaic reasons, voter suppression because an archaic party wants to grasp a stranglehold of as much power as they can, which regrettably they do. All 3 branches of vain government, 33 governorships, 2/3 of state legislatures, just about. So, you keep voting red, well, they can call a constitutional convention, and next thing you know, we're living in the Handmaid's Tale. I don't know necessarily what that would pertain for someone like me, but odds are it would not be pretty. But this is what happens. They want this power, they have this power, and look what's going on. So, it's kind of a rough introduction to This Week in Misery. October 20th, 1973. Oddly enough, 2 years to the day before Monday, October 20th, 1975, the first hour-long episode of The Price is Right. Yes, I know things like that. It's whatever. But that's Saturday. President Richard Nixon, in the midst of the Watergate scandal with the break-in, stealing of files, and claiming executive privilege, trying to do everything he can to shut it down because everything was directly tied to him, his list of enemies, and his mind basically just going back to his childhood and growing up on an orange farm in California and his family not being able to afford a bus ticket to Harvard, so he goes to some Quaker college. I mean, yes, he's kind of fucked from the get-go, but you kind of put a 40, 50, 60-year timer, you throw in a gubernatorial election loss, this is what you get. Special prosecutor for the Watergate investigation, Archibald Cox. He was getting a teeny bit too close. In fact, beyond a teeny bit. So, Nixon, being Nixon, wanted to cover his ass. He went to the Attorney General and said, I want Cox fired. Attorney General said, no, I'm out. Resigned. Deputy Attorney General, I want Cox fired. Nope, I'm out. Also resigned. Nixon eventually fired him himself. Now granted, between his tirades of not respecting the media and just 4 years after he ceremoniously awarded a national championship trophy and plaque to the Texas Longhorns after beating Arkansas to win the Southwest 15-14, completely shunning Penn State, unbeaten, untied, and on a 30-game win streak at the time. Although, let's be fair, had Penn State chosen at the beginning or before the 69 season even started to go to the Cotton Bowl rather than the Orange Bowl, that could have been avoided. But it did give us the fact that Nixon wanted a Super College Bowl type playoff, and now, nearly a half century hence, here we are. But I mentioned Nixon and all things around because of the Saturday Night Massacre, where he fired Archibald Cox. And about a year or so later, 74, he, of course, wound up famously resigning the presidency. Ford took over, then Carter, then Reagan, you know the rest. Now, if you've been paying attention to the news, you've been hearing these different phrases, Nixonian, Saturday Night Massacre, and that fateful date, October 20th in 1973, a lot lately. Because we're seeing the same thing all over again. All the ties between 45 and Putin. Stephen Colbert had it right. Trump's mouth is nothing more than Putin's cock holster. I mean, let's be clear. But with all of this, no taxes, not even a comment about this year's taxes. What happens? Well, James Comey, FBI director, who played his portion of the role in the election, opening his mouth about the non-investigation, really, into Hillary Clinton's emails, testifying in an open hearing saying, yes, there is an investigation going on in Trump, and his advisors and his cohorts and their ties to Russia? Well, yesterday, he got fired. He's gone. He's out. Because he apparently got too close himself. There was a little bit too much going on for someone's liking. And, well, Trump decided, Jeff Sessions, I know you recused yourself. He's on to me. He's got to go. Give me a reason. This was only a week ago. Finally, yesterday, everything came to a head. Comey's out. He's on a private jet. Now, granted, Comey did the smart thing. He turned over his evidence to U.S. attorneys, saying, he's getting a little too close. You may want to take this, otherwise this will never see the light of day. So, for everything bad he did, there is good to make up for it. But it wasn't enough good. He's still gone. So Trump is continuing his Nixon impression. And this gets me to thinking, how close are all of these people? Are we going to see an invocation of the 25th Amendment? Are we finally going to see procedures for the Emoluments Clause? Is this Republican-controlled Congress and this Republican-controlled Senate, are they finally going to get together and do something? Are they finally going to stand up, be that guy, get that statue, and say, hey, this isn't right. We can no longer protect ourselves. We have to protect our country. Until then, Nixon is just going to be in his current form. No, not 1,000 years from now, with the gigantic new robot body and his cryogenic head. No, he's not like that. He's in the form of a fat businessman with fucked up hair, orange skin, wears a diaper, loves eating fast food, looks terrible in his clothes, and has the vocabulary of a 6-year-old. Okay, maybe that's being a little generous. My apologies. But this is what's happening right now. And this is what's going to keep happening until someone stops it. Yes, we're getting the constant drip, 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 but Senate's not really getting along. You have the Republican chairman who doesn't want to sign off on subpoenas. You have Devin Nunes, who loves to go straight to the White House from the House, telling information and basically cavorting with the prime suspect. So for right now, as the FBI releases what they've released after Comey's firing, Trump's just going to keep being Nixon because we're at a stalemate. It's going to take people like us putting up pressure, sounding our voices, signing our petitions, doing everything from demanding taxes to demanding independent commissions to true bipartisan committees with subpoena power. The whole works. We focus our attention on things like the FCC and net neutrality, as we should, for that's important. I want my fans to have just as much access to me as my haters and the neutrals, everybody out there, just like they should have access to everything else. I don't want to look at some porn more times than I want to see other porn. I want to look at all my porn. I want to look at all my sports. I want to do all my writing. Everybody has that right. The internet is open and free. Has been since it came out of government hands in the 90s. They had their grips on it since 1969 when it was ARPANET and created for military and defense and eventually the space program and then on to us. We're given it for a reason. We should keep it for that same reason. But to kind of wrap up this week in misery, for those of you that weren't around until during Watergate, do some history, do some research. Online, library, ask someone, parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, teachers, whoever you know that was around during this. See how they did it. See how they viewed it. And look at how we're seeing things now. Because it was 900 days between Watergate and Nixon's resignation. Look at what the orange fuckhead has done in 100 and change. And look at what he wants to do, given just a little more time. I personally don't think we as a country could survive 900 days at this rate. I mean, when have you known a sitting president willing to meet the leader of North Korea? Just think about that a teeny bit. But this is where we are. And if you're playing a Watergate bingo or Watergate checklist, well, you just got a pretty big space last night. Now, if a couple more U.S. attorneys get the axe, if you're seeing situations like you did with Sally Yates, bravo to her and her testimony, ripping everyone to shreds, especially Ted Cruz, who Canadians, rightly so, do not want back. Then you'll know really the jig is up. We're not getting impeachment yet. But I have a feeling it's coming. Because the more news I see, the more I read, the more I digest, and the more I have time to think, nobody, from Trump to Pence to Sessions, even to his family, who they're still running the business, no one's going to come clean from this. Makes you wonder how nice Club Fed really is. We'll be getting some detailed reports. Hopefully soon. But anyways, enough heavy politics and talk, but sadly, as I transition, there is one more tragedy that I have to get off my chest. And also hearing in the news, Chris Berman, long time ESPN commentator, baseball, NFL, CFL coverage, which is one of his personal favorites, a man that I grew up with on TV, newly retired, off to enjoy his golden years, and unfortunately they've gotten to a bit of a terrible start, as his longtime wife, 33 years, right alongside with them all the way, unfortunately passed away. There was an auto accident, she rear-ended another driver, there are more details that are emerging, but unfortunately she's gone. I offer my condolences to Boom and his family, his late wife's family, the whole lot, because things like this really shouldn't happen. I mean, there's only so much we as human beings can control. There's a lot of things that we can't, but unfortunately it's a time when you do and when you enjoy, or whether it's whatever, sadly, when your number's up, your number's up. You just hope it's peaceful. You hope you can do the things you want, check off everything from every list, and you leave everyone with some good stories to tell. But then when you're gone, you're gone. A lot of times it is pretty sad. This, unfortunately, is one of them. The good man at his job, good man just in general. Now he goes through without really the love of his life, which no one should have to do that. Nah. Well, for those of you who haven't reached for the Kleenex and who are still here and who realize that, yes, I do continue to speak English, as that is my native language, a lot of interesting developments, especially in the world of sports. Now, I wanted to touch on this on last week's episode, but fortunately, it was late. I was ready to crash, kind of ran out of time. But with ESPN, now, everybody's either cutting the cord or looking to cut the cord. I myself am one of them. However, thanks to recent developments with Google Fiber, despite facing legal pressure from the likes of AT&T and Xfinity in the city of Louisville, they continue to press on, and they have announced that they will build their network, create their infrastructure, which gives me hope for my fair city. Although, admittedly, Papa John, if you're listening, this does not save you from getting a smack in the face from yours truly. It doesn't. When you truly learn how to make better pizza, then we'll talk. And don't give me this bullshit about your oversized cookies or your oversized brownies, because let's face it, Pizza Hut's doing them and doing them better. Domino's, they have their things, they're doing them better. And if I want a gigantic cookie, I can go right up to my Publix, or I can go right to Great American Cookie Company, shut up, have them take my money, and get myself some delicious cookie cake. Now, granted, even better than that is my longtime friend Sky, who for my birthday at work a couple of years ago baked me a gigantic, nice, big, round, thick chocolate chip cookie cake that I got to munch on, and I shared with a few of those at the office, because that's kind of what you do for everybody that you like anyway. So it was good. I can get access to those sort of things. I've had access to those sort of things, better iterations in what you're doing, Papa John. So, I mean, just drive off in your Camaro and stop throwing up sponsorships in our face. I want to watch baseball. I'm going to drink my cider or my hard liquor and have a Pizza Hut or Domino's pizza delivered, not yours. NFL, same thing. NBA, same thing. Your soccer teams, same thing. Do you ever realize why the hell you need so many sponsorships and are willing to give things away at half price to begin with? Don't you think that you kind of need to tweak your business model? Or you have so many rose-colored glasses on that you are doing this and figure you can get away with giving away half of your shit at half off? Come on, you need more than Peyton Manning to save you. He's got 47 franchises, and a bunch of those are in Denver because you're dealing with a lot of stoners. They'll eat all kinds of stuff. I've been stoned. I know. When I'm hungry, I'm hungry. I'll think of anything that I can afford, and that way I really don't have to get up from my couch and so far to get. Okay? He's doing it right. You aren't. Face facts. Now that I've gotten that off of my chest, yes, Google Fiber is still around. This is great news. Especially for those like me who want to tear off the shackles of Xfinity, even though their X1 equipment is awesome. My mom loves the talking remote. Everything is gravy. My DVR settings, they're in the cloud. I can watch all of my programs, whatever, whenever. So it's good, but it's still Xfinity. I'm getting a cheaper rate, but it's still Xfinity. And circling back to my original point, ESPN is on Xfinity. They had massive layoffs. We're talking Ed Werder, Jason Stark, a lot of very long-time analysts, ex-players. Over 100 people are suddenly finding new jobs. The fair share at FS1, which is really the better network now anyways, is ESPN being owned by Disney. You're very controlled. You've got a script. You can't have opinions. So you're just part of the gigantic hype chamber, which is what it's become. And which is why, looking at this now, I'm glad that things didn't do well for me in the interview in college for ESPN, because look at what I would have been dealing with and where I would have been working now. Oh, I have dodged way too many bullets in my lifetime. But with all of these layoffs, as part of it, there are some shakeups. Trey Wingo, who just finished hosting a fantastic game show during a March Madness tournament, Bracket Genius, caught an episode or two, pretty sweet. I hope they do it again next year. But he's coming up big time because Mike and Mike, the venerable duo, I remember being up 6 a.m. during one summer, couldn't really sleep. Mom went to work. I tuned on Mike and Mike and listened to them the rest of their entire show. Had ESPN on the rest of the day, and enjoyed seeing a young Maria Sharapova in speed mitten commercials, which made me thankful that I had easy access to a computer and want to play speed mitten, which I still do. But that duo is no more. They're splitting up. Golick is going to go off and do his own show. One of his sons, Golick Jr., he's going to be brought into the fold in some form or fashion with ESPN. And Greeny's going to be paired up with Trey Wingo. They're going to do a show. Now, granted, I'm going to be the first to admit, those days of listening to Mike and Mike as I did long behind me. I listened to them as time went on, and I'm like, they're corporate. They're samey. They don't have that edge. I couldn't do what I did before and count the consecutive days of news or the weird stories that featured testicles. That's gone. And as the boredom set in, I'm like, they're still on? I guess that's great for them, which it is, but when you got your better guys and going on doing different things, it's like, what are you doing? You as a network are being very stagnant. I guess they realized shaking things up, doing things like the 6 with Michael Smith, Jamil Hall, which is great. As they say, wanting to be more hip, more millennial skewing, which don't even get me started on that. they're changing things up, and they're changing up the radio landscape as well. Time will tell, naturally, what's going to go up and go down, but I personally am not looking forward to it. I just think everything has been just too homogenized. Yes, you still have Scott Van Pelt holding it down. Yes, you lured Stephen A. Smith back to ESPN radio, although he was great on Mad Dog Sports. You got a good team with him and Max Kellerman, but you're still holding on to what made you great, even though you know you're not. Your audience is getting older, not younger. They're not going to get younger. I tune into FS1 more often than I do at ESPN. I get more coverage from FS1, or from NHL Network, NFL Network, NBA TV, NBCSN. ESPN is just background noise now. And is even further proof of that, Ice Cube, badass rapper, especially back in the day, went on to become a successful actor. Now, he's got little basketball league coming up over the summer. The Big Three. Players like Allen Iverson, ex-players, legends like George Iceman Gervin, Dr. J, they're all getting involved. Players and coaches. And I think it's awesome. Hell, if I known about this beforehand, I would have weaseled in so I could travel around the country as a play-by-play guy. You got a lot of ex-NBA greats, and it's a great setup. Doing the kind of a barnstorming tour, different cities hosting different weekends of the tournament, 8 teams, and it's kind of like an NBA version of FIBA 33. And what I mean by that, 3-on-3 basketball, half court. You have a lot of the NBA rules apply, 2 3-point shots, 3-second defensive formations. They added a 4-point circle, which is a little quirky. And how the old FIBA 33 rules, first to 33 points wins. With the Big Three, it's first to 60. So you could feasibly have 4 games wrap up in a couple of hours. I think it's very convenient. I'm going to tune in, not to ESPN, but to FS1, where they got the contract with. I'm going to watch and see how this goes, because especially over the summer, this could be fantastic for all parties. I hope it expands, and again, I hope to, at my point, be a play-by-play guy. I could see myself doing that. Apparently other people could too. Now, kind of switching gears from the shakeups at ESPN, and all of my wonders and awesome things that can spurn out of that. Apparently college football is dabbling into a few things. As we know, Leonard Fournette, drafted by the Jaguars. Christian McCaffrey, drafted by the Carolina Panthers. They skipped their bowl games so they could be sure to protect any value that they had for the NFL draft, and rightly so, both first rounders. Michigan tight end Jake Butt, he got an insurance policy on himself for any lost value after his ACL injury. He was able to collect on that. So with all of these players leaning towards protecting themselves in one way or another, especially skipping bowl games, there are coaches, there are schools, and going through various committees to where redshirt rules are changing. Now the red shirt is exactly as it sounds. You wear a red shirt, even on the sidelines during games. You are not eligible to play, but you get an extra year of eligibility. You see how the team goes, you compete, you gauge your starting time. You can still get your 4 years in. Now, they're tweaking the red shirt rules because it's normally your limit, I believe, is 3 games, possibly 4, especially for medical issues. Once you play that, your year of eligibility is burned. It's done, it's gone. Your red shirt's off. So now schools want to look at keeping your red shirt, but playing in bowl games. Playing a couple more games over the course of the season. I think that's fantastic. You've got big stars that you know they're gone. You know they want to protect themselves. Why don't you unleash your new talent? Let them get a feel for defensive schemes. Let them get live reps. And especially the fact that in a bowl game, especially if you're in the bowl subdivision, you're lucky in a lot of cases if you get there once over your college career or twice. You're not at the big schools like in Alabama, like a Clemson, like the SEC, some of the Big 12s, so many others that can get to 3-4 bowl games in a 4-year span. So this may be your one shot. Up your value. Look at your potential. Let them see you so you're being talked about for the future draft classes. I personally think that's a brilliant idea for everyone around. Fans still see their talent. Players get to play. Coaches get to plan. They don't have to do a whole lot of shuffling. This can really, really work for college football. Do they have a long way to go? Fuck yes, they do. But I like this as a start. I like it as a start. Now, one moment over the weekend, and I'll talk about this a little bit more later, I found myself sitting at a bar drinking alone, which may not be a good thing, but I found myself there, and I happened to catch the rest of the Yankees-Cubs game. Yankees wound up winning 11-6, and I was thinking to myself, they announced how they were going to change the timing rules. I see the glimpses of the clock for in-between innings. I've noticed fewer trips to the mound, fewer conferences, things are being sped up in play, and introducing the pitch clock at lower levels was on Manfred's list. I kept going with that. I've already made my peace. It's a start, but they still need help. They still need help in really saving themselves. Now, I'll skip the expanding replay, all the other things I've talked about with the pitch clocks, with things like that, with the intentional walks, which that's also being bandied about, finally. I'll save all that. What baseball needs to really save themselves is what I think a lot of sports should do. Shorten the season. Right now, I'm not interested 100% in baseball. I will be once the Stanley Cup playoffs are over, which I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. But with the 162 games, if it's something that's available every day, especially the fact that in a 30-team league, soon to be 32, when Oakland gets their stadium together, which I would hope now, since things are happening in Vegas, Oakland decides to at least do something to save the A's. They should. Once Tampa Bay gets their stadium together, in which, if you listen to Soccer to the Max with my awesome producer Sean, you will have heard me say what Tampa Bay, the area, needs to do. Cities of Tampa, St. Pete, get yourselves together. Get a 3-step plan. Throw in some Australian football at the end. I'll detail that maybe on another show. But along with their future expansion, they need to shorten the season because it's too much for the players. It's too much for fans. They've lacked interest. So why not? Of course, the owners are going to be losing less literal cash, but find some ways to deal with it. Shorten it by about 20 games or so. Go back to the old 144. Make that a start. And if you're afraid about the owners losing money, we'll make room and expand the playoffs. Have the wild card as a best of 3, as I've said. Have the division series as a best of 7, as I've said. That gate will more than make up for it. And especially when you compute your schedule for the divisions and things like that, and scheduling and games of series and meetings and etc., etc., you could do a lot more with 144 than you could with 162. The permutations are available. And in the end, every owner's really losing 9 games. Between rainouts and snow, double headers, things like that, would 9 games really hurt? I mean, come on. You're an old boys club to begin with. Are you really going to miss that teeny amount of money? Especially when you give fans more your chances towards the end of the season to get even more liquored up because games count that much more. You get to sell that much more beer. Things will balance out for themselves and in your favor. So, all I'm saying is at least think about it. If you're going to expand, do a little bit of manipulation in this sense and just think about it. You're making strides. You got some good bounces. You just had a Cubs-Indians World Series. You got a CBA. You had a damn good World Baseball Classic where the U.S. won. Don't fuck this up. Because I'm scared you might. Finally, as I wrap up this week's show, a little bit of a slice of life for you. The peek into the misadventures of the viewer. Now, I'm not going to mention conundrums, although there is another one, and I have to update my spreadsheet. And if anybody out there knows of some good legal ways for me to acquire $200, tweet me at SquidSportshead, email me, squidthesportshead@gmail.com. Reasons of which I will avail most likely on next week's show. Just for my sanity and for the sake of things. But I noticed, even as I was sitting at that bar, or sitting at my cubicle at work, or even laying on my couch, time has gotten faster. 1 minute, it's 8 o'clock. The next it's at 11, then you're going to lunch, then you're dealing with the commute home. 1 minute you're celebrating New Year's. You blink and it's Valentine's Day. Then St. Patrick's Day, then Easter. Now we're a couple of weeks from Memorial Day. Everybody sees how this year's gone in a blink of an eye. Now, this is something that I learned all the way back in elementary school. The older you get, the less of a chunk time becomes. When you're 5, a year is a fifth of your life. When you're a teenager, it goes down to about 7%. Here I am, closing in on 31. A year is only 3% and change of my life. Fragment that down to months. Fragment that down to weeks and then days. You're talking fractions of a percent. Those fractions are going to get smaller as you get older, but this is where you are. This is where we are as we are aging. Time goes by in a blink because it just becomes a blink. Me, myself, I'm already trying to think plans for my birthday. It's only 6 weeks out. Granted, I should be focusing more on this weekend and potential issues with conundrums, but I'm just playing that as it lies. Instead, I'm thinking about how to break it to people that instead of any potential fancy dinner, just take me to CC's Pizza Buffet, which I haven't been to in years, and God, their new pizzas look delicious. Their new desserts look delicious. Or skipping work early so I could meet up with some friends, go bar hopping a couple places, maybe find myself a new conundrum, put a little something in the air like I want to do. I think about this now because I get emails from Schedule talking about PTO for the rest of the year. You skip a couple months ahead in the calendar. You see where everyone is and what they're doing. As is, I'm sitting here tonight. This time of the month of November, which 6 months from now, my best friend's going to be married. I'm going to be honest, I've been grappling with a lot of feelings about that. One of a few situations where that's created a lot of factions in my mind, which is rare, but in the end, what am I going to do about it? She's happy, he's happy, at least from the looks of things. Planning is going well. They're coming up with a hashtag. Just like always for me, it's timing. He's the luckier man than I am, especially in this instance. Now, granted, I would love to sit down with him and tell him why in a lot of situations he's fucking up. Some observations as a third party I would love to make, but in the end, that would just be doing more damage for my selfish ways and means. And I'm going to tell you right now, after going out Saturday night, which could have been an awesome thing, porn star Jenny Jizz that I follow on Snapchat, she was in town, husband was in town, been talking with him. It's like, yeah, bro, I've been a big fan quite a long time, follow me on Snapchat, Twitter, listen to you on Bubble the Love Sponge. Since you're in town, can I stop by and introduce myself and come on your wife's face? Originally, everything was set. So I go. I get a text from them saying it's going to be a while because they're waiting on a friend. Now, what they did not know, this other friend, Adam, another cool guy, happened to be married to Naughty Alicia, another porn star, also awesome. Well, I peeked at his Snapchat. He was coming to town too because, unfortunately, he and Alicia split up after nearly 20 years of marriage. Now, I wish I had known that sooner. I would have adjusted my plans. But unfortunately, you can't control things happen. Thankfully for all parties involved, it's amicable. There's still going to be content. They're still going to work together. So that aspect won't change, but it's still a bit of a shock. So naturally, when I found out he was coming to town, I was like, okay, some things made sense. But didn't stop them from ghosting and forgetting about me entirely. No text, no nothing. They even went dark on Snapchat till I finally saw them again Sunday, pumping gas like nothing happened. I don't know. Maybe in this case it's for the best. Because the last 2 times I've tried to do something for myself, it just ended up in me finding cool places to drink and helping homeless people, which I did again this time. Now granted, it wasn't like when I was telling this one person, or the last homeless person, about diabetes and how to look up medications and speak with their doctor and helping them out so they can get their medicine. It wasn't this bad, but I could have stayed and drank at home. Could have did prep for other things. But alas, it is what it is. I mean, I like helping people. I like doing these things and spreading the wealth, but does it have to be this every time? I can't win being selfish. Things just work out for me. I get laid, like with the cleaning lady. I created a little more phone footage of a girl sucking my cock. Why can't these things just happen on a regular basis instead of just me sitting on Facebook Messenger video chatting with the hot ginger? Why can't things like that be more in person? Is it a curse? Is it some sort of destiny? I would like to know. Like at the very least plan for it. And if it's not, I would like to know that too. So I know how to fix it. I don't know. Maybe with all this grumbling and what I should be searching for and what I've found and all these different things, maybe there is some credence to it after all. Maybe I should go ahead and find some time to sit and meditate on a couple of things. But alas, enough philosophy, because I am way too sober for this. I've brought you to the end of another episode of Point of Viewer, and I've probably given you the kind of feeling. You're welcome. You can again follow me on Twitter at SquidSportsHead. You can search for this podcast, iTunes, Stitcher, wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm around. I've got my own mushroom stamp on the internet. And if you're wondering what the hell is wrong with me but don't want to deal with me directly, then tweet my awesome producer at W2M Sean. And while you're at it, go to W2MNetwork.com. Listen to all my other shows. This Week in the AFL at This Week in AFL. Soccer to the Max with Sean and Rachel McCreeger. And then if you don't like mine, there's plenty of other shows. Wrestling, video games, whatever. It's there for your perusing and for your enjoyment. So if you don't want to hear my dulcet tones, that's just fine. You've got options. But nevertheless, I'm out. Do your homework. And don't forget to be awesome.
The following podcast is a W2M Network original production. Visit W2Mnet.com for all of our other great podcasts, plus news, reviews, articles, and opinions from the worlds of wrestling, video games, football, and entertainment.